Alrighty.
Hit him with it.
So we're on and we're all good and ready to go. GoldenDebate
Rolling
Show,
gold.
GoldenShow. GoldenMob.com.
Like it, comment, share it,
So let's get it
hug
in.
it. Pass it to the left-hand side.
Yeah, so let's get golden with them.
Shining. EarlyMorningMob.com. Golden Debate Show, Golden Show, Golden Real, Greatest Show. Everything golden and all united.
Keeps it going. We got a lot of podcasts and whatnot because we try to spread the truth.
Hit him with it.
Creative, real, getting on the real world.
And run it.
So fuck the plastic and like, comment, share, and download.
Yeah, while these vamps are going double wood, we over here going golden plate.
Definitely
Yeah, don't forget about that. We going ham in the pit, gold pickers.
So let's set it off with our man, 2-minute news from YouTube.
La noticia de 2 minutos aquí de YouTubery. Dímelo, Bob.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of News in 2
Hi,
Minutes,
everybody.
bringing you the news that you need to know every day. Let's begin. Authorities are reporting that at least 2 healthcare workers that came into contact with the second known MERS case in the U.S. have begun to show signs of the disease with symptoms that closely resemble the onset of pneumonia, causing health officials in the area to institute self-isolation measures with at least 20 other healthcare workers that may have come into contact with the affected. While we are still trying to determine the efficacy of viral control measures taken at the site, infectious disease researchers that originally put aside concerns over the high rate of in-hospital transmission throughout the Middle East are now beginning to call for caution, saying that the virus may have the ability to slip through well-tested filtration systems or viral isolation measures here in the U.S. Officials are investigating reports of further violence following an attack on Tuesday that led to the deaths of at least 7 Ukrainian servicemen and 1 pro-Russian separatist. Authorities in the region are calling for complete surveillance of all groups found to harbor anti-Ukrainian sentiment, as officials demand a full investigation into any leading figures with ties to the groups. Government forces are being deployed to one of Mexico's most embattled states following the ambush and assassination of a leading security official. Researchers are reporting that a governmental curfew has been discussed, with regional leaders calling for forces to begin deployment immediately, where heavily armed security personnel will begin dividing the state into multiple regions which will be patrolled 24 hours per day. And to wrap things up, American officials are confirming the use of the Global Hawk, a highly sensitive unmanned aerial drone over Nigeria, as opponents warn that the West is continually building up a military presence over the country. Authorities in China have urged the U.S. military to review its actions and recent provocations toward the South China Sea, in what some experts are calling a clear warning of action. Forecasters are reporting an increasing chance of polar geomagnetic storms today, as transitioning solar winds are expected to hit Earth's magnetic field, and a downgraded 6.5 that struck near the time of Tuesday's release in Panama, causing notable structural damage, followed by a 4.8 in Japan, and an ongoing cluster in Oklahoma completes today's Quake Watch. And that's it for this episode of News in 2 Minutes. Check back tomorrow for more news that the aware need the most. This week's News in 2 Minutes is brought to you by Silver-Investor.com, home of the Morgan Report, a global resource for serious metals investors. Visit Silver-Investor.com and sign up for the highly acclaimed newsletter today.
From the Young Turks.
Shank 'em.
I like when we play multiple clips and some of the people are on the same show, so it's kind of like
Interacting.
you hear the same voices that you hear on the show all
so that leads
down.
to
So check out the Joe Rogan Experience, check out the Young
I
Turks,
actually feel
check out definitely
EarlyMorningMob.com.
Golden Debate Show and the Golden
Like, that's
Show,
kind of a
Like,
and all the other
comment,
podcasts
share
we say
it,
we do.
hug it, kiss it.
like Russell Simmons is always talking about, oh, you should meditate and don't worry about money. I'm like, yeah, Russell, but you got $300 million. Right? It's easy to say don't worry about money when you have $300 million, right?
Yeah.
It's harder for a person who's trying to pay their rent and figuring out where they're going to get, food for their kids and stuff like that. And I know that. I know that feeling of like being super stressed out about not having money and the effects of that. But when you get a little bit, it feels 1,000 times better, because if you grew up rich, it's not your fault. You just take it for granted. Because you never had any other context. Like you have no idea how phenomenal it is to fly first class or business class or to get driven around in limos. You take it as, well, that's normal. So you can only go down. If you lose that stuff, then you're like, oh my God, my world has exploded. How could anyone live like this? Yeah. Right? But it's hard to go up, and it's hard to have that context. So, look, I think I'm the luckiest guy alive because I grew up middle class. So I had enough that I can get an education, and I didn't have to, sell drugs. I didn't have to do any crazy shit to get money, right? So my dad provided that for me. But I grew up middle class enough that I value money, and I and it means the world's like, so anybody who says that money isn't important doesn't know what they're talking about, hasn't been poor enough to understand that, yes, money's fucking important.
I totally agree with you about being unfortunate if you grow up rich. I really do. I think that especially if you grow up rich with ignorant parents, parents that don't sort of explain to you in great detail how fortunate you are to be in this situation and the importance of appreciating the struggle. But I have this weird relationship with money, and it's gotten weirder and weirder over the last few years, where it's going to sound really crazy, and it sounds crazy even to me, but I objectively look at humans, and I look at what we're doing, and I look at this sort of system that we set up, and we think it's just, this is the way people operate. You exchange money for goods, and this is, our society is based on money, and it's all about trying to earn money. But I look at it and I go, well, that's just a creation. That's just a man-made creation. And what else is going on? Well, what else is going on is there's this slow but inevitable sort of dissolving of the boundaries between human beings and information. And whether that information is the secrets about the NSA or that information is, things that are on the internet, emails, photographs, there's the trend is to have ultimate access to all information for everyone. And I think that we're going to come to a bottleneck. And the bottleneck is going to be that what is money exactly? Well, at this point in time, it's just ones and zeros. It's just information. Money now is broken down to, we don't have a gold standard anymore. Our money is based entirely on information. It's information in a database somewhere. Well, there's going to be a point in time where we have to decide as a civilization that the only way to continue to move forward with our innovation, to continue to move forward with technology, we're going to have to dissolve the boundary between human beings and the information that is money. The money's not going to be worth anything anymore. It's going to be we're going to have to come up with some new way in order to transfer wealth or to determine wealth or to determine reward for effort or for, whatever you're doing. Because if we're just basing it on what we're basing it on now, it's inevitable that it comes to this point where you're not going to be able to protect your money. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to store it. You're not going to be able. It's not going to be anywhere. And if it's just ones and zeros, everyone's going to have access to it. The distribution of it is going to get very weird.
So I'm trying to understand that. So is the main problem there, you think, if you follow that to its natural conclusion, that it's going to get hacked?
No, I don't even think it's going to be. I think we're calling it hacked now, but I think the trend seems to be to no secrets. No secrets, complete transparency. I think the ultimate
next clip comes from the
I
guy
write
who always
books.
breaks
It's just
down
a thing I do in my spare time. But I even wrote like half of the quotes that have been attributed to me on Tumblr. Now we all know that Justin Bieber fills his spare time by drag racing and Shia LaBeouf likes to plagiarize. But today I'm going to share with you the surprising hobbies of many well-known people.
Music, we work on slave jobs, and then we do the podcast.
Hit him with it. Word, I got bottle caps, baseball cards. My stamp collection is popping.
Price is Right host Bob Barker karate lessons for 8 years. Barker once recalled, he used to come to my home and we'd do karate. We started out here on my lawn and then I started parking my car on the driveway and made my garage into a karate studio. I took lessons for 8 years. Then Chuck got into acting. You'll be surprised to learn that director David Lynch has had some bizarre hobbies over the years, including musician, coffee roaster, and nightclub owner. Since I'm sure you'll want to see for yourself, you can actually buy his coffee at Whole Foods and visit the Mulholland Drive-inspired Club Silencio in Paris. And this club has everything, or at least that's what I heard from Stefan. Speaking of directors, Stanley Kubrick collected stationery and other letter-writing paraphernalia. According to his brother-in-law, Kubrick once learned that a line of brown ink was getting discontinued, so he went ahead and bought every bottle left in existence, a total of 100 bottles. Another famous collector is Ayn Rand, who had a stamp collection. She even wrote an article called Why I Like Stamp Collecting for the Minkus Stamp Journal in 1971. Spoiler alert, she likes stamp collecting because it's not a Marxist enterprise that props up the weak. Thomas Edison was a huge cinephile, but he wasn't a fan of talkies, even believing that sound in the movies spoiled everything. He once said, "There isn't any good acting on the screen. They concentrate on the voice now and have forgotten how to act. I don't blame you, Edison. That was before acting legends like Ashton Kutcher, Paris Hilton, and Nicolas Cage made it to the big screen and combined physical presence with a beautiful voice. Anyway, nice to know that Thomas Edison was one of those get-off-my-lawn old people. Former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher also took in culture as a hobby. She was a big fan of operas and going to museums. Warren Buffett plays the ukulele. He told the Today Show that he learned to play in college so that he could impress a girl. Surprisingly, it didn't work. Ernest Hemingway was, of course, quite the outdoorsman. He enjoyed hunting and fishing. Another famous outdoorsman, though, Sigmund Freud. He liked to hike and collect mushrooms. Not those kind. Albert Einstein enjoyed sailing, but many say he never really learned how to properly swim. His boat was named Tinef, which is Yiddish for junk. Einstein was also a violinist, by the way, generally an overachiever. Emily Dickinson was an excellent baker. A loaf of bread that she made even came in second place for a baking competition in the 1856 Amherst Cattle Show. Her prize? 50 cents. A lot of famous people love golf, including Condoleezza Rice, Samuel L. Jackson, Dennis Quaid, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Halle Berry, Michael Jordan, Barack Obama, and Bill Murray. Of course, we all know that another of Bill Murray's hobbies is getting arrested for drunk driving a golf cart. And yes, that is the third time that we've made that joke on this show, and I refuse to apologize. Speaking of sports, NFL running back Arian Foster likes to write poetry and raps in his spare time, and David Beckham fences with his pals Tom Cruise and Will Smith, and no, I am not making that up. Former Houston Rockets guard and the shortest player to be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, Calvin Murphy, was a world-class baton twirler. Fellow Basketball Hall of Famer Kareem Abdul-Jabbar collects rugs, and current San Antonio Spurs player Tim Duncan likes going to Renaissance fairs and playing Dungeons and Dragons. A man after my own heart. Billionaire Richard Branson likes to kite surf. In fact, in 2013, he was part of a group that broke the Guinness World Record for largest parade of kite surfers. Speaking of billionaires, Steve Jobs grew up playing Bob Dylan songs on the guitar. We can actually partially thank Bob Dylan, who was a painter in his spare time for the record, for Apple. According to the company's co-founder Steve Wozniak, he and Jobs developed a friendship because they both liked Dylan and would go on shopping excursions together to buy his bootlegs. Wozniak's current hobby, by the way, Segway polo. Brad Pitt has a fairly normal hobby, photography. On the other hand, his wife, Angelina Jolie, collects daggers. Jolie's mom took her to buy her first dagger when she was just 11, and the Jolie Pitts plan to continue that tradition with their own kids, which is going to mean a lot of daggers. While I'm talking about actors, Susan Sarandon loves ping pong. In fact, she calls herself a ping pong propagandist and is part owner of Spin, a company that runs ping pong clubs in New York, Toronto, LA, and Dubai. When she's not busy being nominated for every possible award, Meryl Streep knits, as does Ryan Gosling. One of my favorite authors, Zadie Smith, grew up tap dancing. In fact, she spent 10 years pursuing the art form and a career in musical theater before becoming a writer. Another author, Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, dabbled in fashion. My God, why didn't he just write books? Anyway, in 1871, he was
Here's some
granted
completely insane poll numbers. 9% of Americans believe that aliens took the Malaysian Airlines plane. There's a new CNN poll. 9% of Americans think that space aliens, time travelers, or beings from another dimension are responsible for the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Now remember, in 2012, National Geographic did a survey where they found that 36% of Americans believe that aliens have already visited Earth. If we take that 36 and subtract the 9% who think aliens were responsible for MH370, that leaves 27% of Americans that believe aliens have visited Earth but aren't responsible for this particular airplane disappearance. I would love to interview some of those individuals. The new CNN poll also asked respondents where they think the plane is right now. 51% of Americans seemingly believe that the plane is in the Indian Ocean area around where the search teams have been looking. 46% of Americans think that it is somewhere else. None of the people polled could actually know where the plane is, so the question itself seems ridiculous, but maybe more ridiculous is the idea that half of America thinks all the aviation experts are wrong. Again, this tendency to believe that on everything, just the most basic, logical, simple explanation is not true without any evidence at all suggesting an alternate, realistic hypothesis.
Right. In this situation, well, in a lot of situations, I guess I can't get too mad at people for wanting to believe that the more interesting, exciting, and outrageous thing is the truth or somewhat true. I mean, let's face it, David, it is way more interesting to discuss the possibility of aliens taking that ship away than it is to talk about it just crashing into the Indian Ocean.
You're completely right, but this isn't really that funny because for whatever reason, for a lot of reasons,
the U.S. Air flag on the tail and a camouflage drone and flies right over the ring, and it's a beautiful piece of propaganda as we continue to listen.
Really could have been catastrophic. What may be more concerning, though, Wolf, is that this happened in March and was never publicly reported until an FAA official told people at a special drone conference on Thursday.
Yes, and sent the package to us on Friday.
Yeah, 2 months to develop the package.
Exactly.
That's pretty shocking. I don't know why we didn't know about that earlier. How catastrophic?
But it gets better. Shocking.
Could it have been, Renee?
Well, you saw what happened when a flock of geese, you saw what that happened or what problems.
This is great. So now she is going to compare a drone hitting a mid-air collision, essentially, to the Miracle on the Hudson. Pay attention to the words.
Or what problems that caused for that U.S. Airways flight known as Miracle on the Hudson. Well, just imagine a drone.
Excuse me. Was that not American?
I'm sorry?
She says you saw how problematic that was for the U.S. Airways flight on the Hudson.
Well, I think it was American. I don't think he worked for U.S. Air.
Why is she saying... No, it was U.S. Airways 1549. No, I apologize. No, she's
okay,
right.
well, there we go.
Miracle on the Hudson. Well, just imagine a drone getting sucked up in one of the plane's engines.
Okay, so here is a camouflage drone. Then
it's camouflage a drone that's flying in the sky.
But it's getting sucked up into the engine. Seriously?
Well, just imagine.
No, this is her analysis. So, no, it's not ripping off a wing. No, it's getting sucked up into the engine.
Drone getting sucked up in one of the plane's engines. Again, Wolf, in that own FAA official's own words, it could have really been catastrophic.
Really? That's how really catastrophic.
So what can be done to fix this problem?
Well, over the next 5 years, the FAA is estimating that as many as 7,500 drones could be flying in the U.S. airspace at any given time. So there's some urgency in figuring out how to safely integrate these drones with the airspace. We do know that the FAA has been working on a plan to safely integrate drones into the airspace so that you don't have incidents where you have passenger aircrafts crashing into drones that are also sharing that same space.
I'd say legislation being rammed through committee as we speak. What a bunch of propaganda.
Well, they don't want to let the drones get into the hands of the public.
No, in fact...
Thus, you would have like a situation in San Francisco, say the Occupy thing going on and people getting clubbed.
Yeah.
And then they're grabbing everybody nearby that's shooting it with their their phone cams. But then if there was a drone overhead, just filming the whole thing, it would be disastrous for the police. So they have to shoot it.
Yep.
Which is what I'd do.
Well, if anything comes within 500
hovering.
Anything within 500 feet of my house is getting shot, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, so it's hovering there. You can just shoot. A good rifle. Anyone with a rifle can take one down if they're that close.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, although you'd be on film.
Hey, are you doing the show today? Are you doing Twitch?
Yeah, I'm doing the show. I'm doing the Twitch show today.
Okay. Shall I prepare you for the show?
A 4-day series of meetings has kicked off with the United Nations designed to take, quote, bold action by adopting new preemptive laws to prevent the rise of robots. Something that I warned about 10 years ago in my book, The Resistance Manifesto, which many people laugh off as a science fiction fantasy.
Coinciding with
now many human
DARPA.
rights groups and scientists are warning that we are on the verge of an utter disaster. A 26-page report put out by Human Rights Watch warns that fully autonomous weapons would threaten rights and principles under international law as fundamental as the right to life, the right to a remedy, and the principle of dignity. Fully autonomous weapons could be prone to killing people unlawfully because the weapons could not be programmed to handle every situation, Human Rights Watch added. According to roboticists, there is little prospect that these weapons would possess human qualities such as judgment that facilitate compliance with the right to life in unforeseen situations. Oh, let's just have an artificially intelligent robot built, and then that'll just solve that remedy, won't it? All the big major tech companies, from Google to Facebook, are pouring billions of dollars into
a sudden gust of wind caused a bouncy house to fly away in New York. Now, that sounds kind of funny, except there were 3 children in it, and 2 of them were seriously injured. According to Vox, there were 3 children inside, and when the house was about 15 feet up, they fell out of it. 2 boys, one who landed on a parked car, and another who landed directly on the street, were seriously injured and are currently hospitalized, while the girl suffered only scrapes and bruises. Now, the pictures are insane. There's a picture of the house very, very high up in the air. Look at that.
Okay, now look, let's just understand a couple of things. First of all, it's taken from a certain angle, so it probably is not quite as high as it looks there. Second of all, who cares? It's really, really high. Okay, and if your kids were in there, you'd be like, no, that's the craziest story, man. First of all, the degree to which I would sue that bouncy house. I would own the Bouncy House Corporation and then shut it down.
Okay, so here's a really interesting thing about the bouncy houses. They don't weigh much, obviously. It's like a giant balloon. I think they weigh about 38 pounds. And the way that they keep them stable is they use stakes. So they take stakes and they'll nail it into the floor or the ground. And unfortunately, it's not deep enough. It's usually too shallow. So if there is a gust or anything like that, it's very, very easy to blow this away. Again, it's like a giant balloon. And
no, with this story, the bouncy house market just lost 50% of its value.
This has happened twice before. This isn't
that's crazy.
Time.
My kids are never going on a bouncy house.
This has happened before, which is insane.
Unless I'm weighing down the bouncy house.
Yeah. So they've had issues with this before, which is why there are some lawmakers who said, hey, you know what, we need to make sure that there are professionals there to make sure that they keep, an eye on what's going on with the bouncy house.
By the way, imagine that's your job. I'm a professional bouncy houser. Okay, my job is to make sure this house doesn't float away. I'm not sure that I'm buying or renting the bouncy house for my kid's birthday party.
Abu 7 by now.
Talk about
your boy again, John Kerry,
media with the
trying to start a war over the climate
change.
Come on, man. Al Gore with global warming. Now John Kerry with the climate changes.
Charge.
Word. We're getting
taxed. Pollution. They're trying to charge.
Failed to mention other key factors, secrets that they keep from the people. Well, now it seems 100% that this climate change theory is going to be used as a catalyst to wage war globally. You have to pay attention to the rhetoric. You have to watch what they're doing. I've been doing this long enough. I can see where they're going with this. And John Kerry right here is hinting at that exact same situation. It used to be Al Gore was the spokesman, and then people got sick of him. Well, now John Kerry's trying to step up and be that spokesman. Now, as Washington states, the accelerating rate of climate change poses a severe risk to national security and acts as a catalyst for global political conflict. Now, the Center for Naval Analysis Military Advisory Board found that the climate change-induced drought in the Middle East and Africa is leading to conflicts over food and water and escalating long-standing regional and ethnic tensions and turning it all into violent clashes. They're trying to state here that this climate change is creating chaos when these are the individuals that are in control of the technologies like HAARP, cloud seeding. What are they spraying out of them chemtrails? They have the ability to steer these storms, these clouds. They could place water in regions if they so choose, but they choose
not. So now we've come to the part where we'll strammer and try to read some articles.
Reading rainbow.
So this is from before it's news. They had so many good articles, but this one I found pretty interesting. Could plastic, chemical BPA be making people obese? At last check, more than 35% of U.S. adults over the age of 20 are obese, an astounding number that most often blemished on who is known as the standard American diet. They call it SAD. That's pretty crazy. It is sad.
Chili.
And inactive, but some recent research suggests that there is more to it, particularly that the presence of
in my belly.
biphenyl, I can't even say this fucking chemical, is a toxin found in plastic drinks and food containers, and they could be contributing to the phenomena. Of course, I hit something on my phone and something else about that. A study produced in PLOS 1 in 2013 revealed that school-aged children in grades 4 to 12 who had higher levels of BPA were more likely to be obese. But we blame BPA for increasing waistlines. While it certainly is a prime factor, some seem to think that the factor isn't enough for concern. BPA is an doctrine distributing industrial chemical used in the production of rigid plastic materials. So pretty much like they said, plastic bottles with a little water in it, when you let the water leach into it from the sun and shit, the BPA gets into it. Not only is that bad for you, they're trying to say that now they're linking it to obesity. I think that's just from the GMOs and all the fucking...
It's all that extra shit they're adding in the food.
Yeah, it is.
Early morning mob.com.
Alright, so this article from InfoWars. Fear drives journalists to cower into self-censorship. The global elite shapes flows of information through an mediation of journalists. The Stasi surveillance state exemplify... I love the way Alex Jones, you can even hear his voice when he writes.
Vampiry.
Exemplified by NSA snooping, has very little, if anything, to do with terrorists, like all the apparatus of the totalitarian state. The surveillance focuses on protecting and maintaining the national security state's monopoly of political power. Police state surveillance is designed to facilitate the early discovery of oppression and decisively elimination before it substantially changes or reform occurs. In addition to eliminating political opposition, the Occupy Wall Street movement serves as a prime example. The Stasi state is designed to intimidate and moderate expressions of political opposition. It could be persuasively argued that this is the reason that the established media obsessively dwells on the NSA story and its associated means. The establishment media consistently portrays former NSA analyst Edward Snowden in a negative light and characterizes him as a leaker of state secrets. This negative and delusional revelations about the depth and the security of the government surveillance have produced behavior on the part of journalists and others previously observed in communist and socialist authoritarian states. The question of the harm caused by widespread surveillance in democracies like the surveillance being conducted by the U.S. National Security Agency is underexplored. I always go into a southern drawl and tells me read. Explains PEN America, an organization dedicated to freedom of expression. A survey conducted recently by the group published in a paper titled Chilling Effects, NSA Surveillance Drives U.S. Writers to Self-Censor, reveals that 85% of writers are worried about the government surveillance. I hate having to flip pages, and this is why I hate it in school. Flip. Don't flip on us, though. Like on the channel, Americans and 73% of writers have never been worried about privacy rights. And freedom of the press are here today. According to the survey, writers and journalists are reluctant to research and write about the American Stasi state, apparatus, and controversial political topics. I have felt that even a comment on the Snowden case in an email would flag my email as worthy of being looked at. One respondent said. Hey! I have made a conscious, deliberate choice to avoid certain conversational topics in electronic emails out of concern that their communications may be surveillanced.
Yes, they're watching it. They're already on that shit.
Numbers of citizens, and because of the crisis which is even now developing, this radio station will remain on the air day and night. This station and hundreds of other radio and TV stations throughout this part of the country are pooling their resources through an emergency network hookup to keep you informed of all developments.
The ghost of the darkness that comes.
He's here. Thanks for listening to the Golden Show. All faults and opinions that of the host, guest, and sources which
Adios.
the flippity flip. Like I'm a chair and download motherfuckers.
Golden. Get away with these golden boys, yo. It's the Golden Universe, yo.
Every motherfucking Saturday, GoldenShow, Golden Day Show, learn about that can.
Like it, hug it, kiss it, share it, pass it. It is gold. It's golden information for that ass.
Right here, I was going to chop up before you say safety first, because it's funner for you to say it again.
Safety first. Be wary of your child.